Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are diving into some interesting developments surrounding the potential for public service cuts and what that could mean for the future under coalition government. This topic was recently touched on by Peter Dutton in an interview, and from what he said, it seems like cuts could be on the horizon, although he was fairly non-committal, not offering much in terms of specifics. He did mention that there wouldn't be any increases in the public service, which could hint at some reductions ahead. But it's not just Peter Dutton making these comments. Jane Hume, a key figure, also brought up the prospect of cuts, particularly within certain departments. For instance, she mentioned a $200,000 cut to the First Nations position within the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. While that might not seem like a huge amount in the grand scheme of things, it's clear the coalition's approach to government efficiency could mean a tightening of the belt across various sectors. A key part of this conversation is the idea of a war against woke, something that's been making the rounds in political discourse. This aligns with the broader notion of reducing what the coalition sees as unnecessary spending or waste. It's not a new tactic, but it's certainly gaining traction. However, Jane Hume also noted that a lot of this could be part of a broader effort to cut the fat from government expenditure, which, as some see it, could include reducing or eliminating positions and projects perceived as part of a broader social agenda. In another part of the discussion, Hume touched on an appointment within the coalition's ranks, Jane Price, who's being placed in charge of government efficiency. Price's role is essentially to identify areas of waste and streamline government operations. Hume was asked whether this was really her responsibility as the shadow finance minister, but she deferred to Dutton, suggesting that the final call on cuts would rest with him. It's an interesting dynamic because it raises the question of how much power the finance minister should have over government efficiency versus other roles within the administration. Historically, figures like Peter Walsh in the Hawke government would have been the ones to wield the proverbial razor when it came to cutting expenditure. Now, it seems the responsibility is being spread out a little more. One area where cuts are being pointed out is the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. It was recently revealed that the department has hired a consultant to provide advice on how to incorporate a First Nations approach to foreign affairs. The bill for this consultancy? A hefty $250,000. On top of that, the department already has a First Nations ambassador whose job includes developing a strategic approach to these issues. His salary? $380,000 a year. The argument here is that such duplications are inefficient and indicative of wasteful government spending, which the coalition is keen to address. However, when questioned about how this approach would work in practice, Jane Hume didn't provide many concrete answers. Instead, she pointed to Dutton, suggesting that the details of these cuts will be clearer after the election. This lack of specificity has raised eyebrows, especially considering that in the past, such vague promises have often backfired. Peter Dutton's strategy seems to be a bit of a gamble. While he's promising cuts and better government efficiency, he's not putting forward a detailed plan outlining exactly where the cuts will occur or what they will entail. This approach is somewhat reminiscent of Donald Trump's tactics in the US, where broad promises were made without providing much in the way of concrete policy documents. And while Dutton's approach isn't as extreme, it's clear that he's betting on the idea that voters might be willing to trust the coalition with these promises, especially given the current political climate. In terms of how this strategy will play out, it's hard to say. Will voters be swayed by broad promises of government efficiency, or will they demand more details? It's a question that will be answered in the upcoming election, which, as many analysts predict, will be tight and fiercely contested. To wrap things up, the conversation around public service cuts and government efficiency is far from over. Peter Dutton and Jane Hume's remarks are just the beginning of what could be a contentious discussion during the election. That's where I'll leave it for now. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss my next video. Stay informed, Australia.